So a couple of slides to go through first, just to give you an overview of what we're going to do today, but I'm going to try and keep these kind of short and sweet and get straight into a demo and show you some Jenkins Pipeline and Octopus Deploy. So a couple of things we're going to cover. So first of all, we're going to take a look at Jenkins Pipeline and Jenkinsfile. I'll talk a little bit about those in just a second. We're going to look at how to integrate Octopus Deploy with a Jenkinsfile. We're also going to look at my take on a modern deployment process. To kind of show it all off, we're going to apply the Spring Boot Pet Clinic web application for an experienced Java developers out there. I'm sure you've came across the sample Pet Clinic application at some point. We're also going to be deploying database changes. And to do that, we're going to be using what's called a Flyway migrations package. So Flyway is an open source tool that we can use to kind of source control your database scripts for your application versions. So we're going to be playing that out with Octopus today. Then we're also going to look a little bit more in detail of structured configuration variables inside Octopus and how Octopus can replace values in your Java properties and YAML files as you deploy to different environments in your estate.
Is Flyway an open source thing or is that a paid thing? And who makes that?
So the people that own that, so people took over that are Redgate. I'm using the community edition. So it's free to use, and I believe there are some paid editions. In terms of detail of that, I'm not massively sure, but I tend to only use it. Tend to use the community edition, so it's free for me. But it's worth checking that out, and I'm going to send a link over in the follow-up email of this webinar today with some details on the Flyway tool itself. Good question, Shawn. So first of all, we talk about modernizing our CI/CD pipeline. We're going to be using Jenkins today. I'm going to talk about modernizing from a classic freestyle Jenkins setup to use Jenkins Pipeline. Now, classic freestyle projects in Jenkins were mainly driven from the web portal. So there's a lot of clicking around in the UI and there's nothing stored. So the actual configuration wasn't stored as code. And all the build processes, your build definitions, all your artifacts were stored in the Jenkins backend somewhere, whether that be in the Jenkins database or in some configuration files for Jenkins. And also, we're going to look at how the Jenkins pipeline Jenkins files can run jobs in parallel and on different agents, kind of freeing up sequential tasks compared to a freestyle projects in Jenkins. So what is the Jenkins pipeline and what is a Jenkins file? So as we just mentioned there, a lot of the freestyle Jenkins projects were steps that you had to build via the UI. The Jenkins pipeline, Jenkins files are stored as code, normally inside the same repo as your application. And essentially, the Jenkins pipeline gives you a way of basically gives you a set of tools to model simple to complex build and deployment pipelines. So in the Jenkins file, that's where we're going to store all our steps. And you can run each stage, let's say, on different build agents. So let's say in your Jenkins server, you've got different agents to do different things for different applications. We can specify in the Jenkins file which stage each stage runs on a different agent. We can manage multiple branches in a single file rather than numerous different projects. Probably the most important part is your CI/CD pipeline is actually version controlled in a particular source code repository. In our case, we're going to use GitHub today.
So a Jenkins file is kind of like a bit like a pipeline, a GitHub action, or the Azure DevOps or YAML approach?
Yeah, it's exactly like that. So yes, the actual Jenkins file is a text file. It's actually formatted in JSON, but yeah, it's essentially to compete with Azure DevOps pipelines and GitHub Actions, and so yeah, it's actually in JSON. So I'm not sure about you, Shawn, whether you're a JSON man or a YAML man. I think I'm just kind of used to now writing JSON, so that's kind of my preferred option. But I don't want to start an argument off here on the webinar.
Yeah, I would go the opposite way. Because of Kubernetes, I've gotten so used to YAML approach, but we can leave that for another day.
Yeah, and it's probably also worth mentioning at this point. Now we're talking about Jenkins Pipeline and a Jenkinsfile, so we might be concerned. Oh wow, okay, so I've got to go learn another language to build my CI/CD pipeline. Most of it can still be configured in the UI. I know sometimes it can be scary, Shawn, when we're looking at a new technology and everything has to be coded. So rest assured, if you didn't want to learn how to do it in JSON, you can actually still do it in the UI. Okay. So lastly, what we're going to do is take a look at a modern deployment process. Now, first things first, I kind of, in my career, I got a tail end of this. So a developer passed me a release and he passed me a Word document or a spreadsheet with a list of tasks to do to get the application update deployed. First thing we want to see in a modern deployment process is kind of eradicate those Word documents. Now, Shawn, we'll call on your experience here. You've had a tad more experience in the industry than me. I'm pretty sure you've seen those big long Word documents that get updated and stuff missed from them.
Yeah, the gray in the beard is my experience, as you put it. Yes, unfortunately, I have encountered that. My last job, when I first started, it was all Word documents. It was absolutely horrendous. I was really, really happy when we started off on an automated approach.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, so let's take away the Word documents. So the deployment process should be automated, reliable and repeatable. So the packages that we deploy to our development environment, we want those packages to be the same that we deploy to production. So if we know it's working in development, they're the same packages. We want to use the same deployment process steps to actually deploy it to production, so we can have confidence that whatever we deploy in dev works. Also, when it deploys to production, also works. Another part of a modern deployment process is configuration management. We all have these application config files. When we talk about Java, an application config file could be either a Java property file, or a YAML configuration file, and it's how those files tend to. The values in those files tend to change as we're deploying to dev, test, and production. So we need to find an easy way to actually change those as we're deploying to dev, test, and production. And I kind of show you how we do that in Octopus Deploy today. And lastly, what I think is really important is actual deployment approvals. So back when I first started kind of my DevOps journey, I was responsible for deploying applications. It was just we were a small team of developers, and we were kind of just pushing code through dev, test, and production whenever we needed to. But as your company grows, there are more people involved in the release, and it's key that we start getting approvals from the right people. A couple of reasons why we need to do that. As a developer, I think, yes, okay, it's cool, let's just push it to production. But what I don't know is if something goes wrong, is there people on hand to pick up any issues and fix any servers that go down, or let our customers know that something's gone wrong. So we want to add approvals to our deployment process just to kind of get feedback from other members of the release team to make sure we're actually okay to do the deployment. And we're going to look at that today in Octopus. So I'm going to jump in. I'll go back one. I'll go straight into the demo. So firstly, what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at some backend stuff that I've set up to integrate Octopus Deploy with Jenkins Pipeline and Jenkinsfile. So firstly, there's a couple of plugins that you may need to install in your Jenkins server. So I'm going to go over to manage plugins. What I'm going to do is just actually I'm going to go to installed pipeline. I've got the ocean there. I'm going to come on to that a little bit later on. I'm going to go down. I'll look at a couple of plugins here that I've installed. So I've installed the Jenkins Pipeline plugin. I've also installed the Octopus Deploy plugin. So Octopus Deploy comes with first-class integration with Jenkins. What that plugin allows us to do, it allows us to create and deploy releases from the Jenkins server into Octopus. So for the demo today, I just kind of quickly show you how I've configured the Octopus Deploy plugin, and then we'll take a look at the pipeline in Jenkins. So I go back up. Jenkins. So first of all, configure system. So now I've installed the plugin. We scroll down. What we do, we get the option for the Octopus Deploy plugin. So a couple of parameters needed to set this up. So we've got the server ID. I've just called that Octopus. That can be anything you want. It's something what we're going to reference in the Jenkins file itself to call the Octopus Deploy tool. We get the URL to the Octopus server and an API key. So rather than when we're in the Jenkins file, we need to use obviously the Octopus Deploy plugin. You can call the Octopus CLI manually and pass in an API key, but I think it's best to keep the kind of credentials for servers like that out of the config file and somewhere separate. So this is a good place to do that. We're also going to be connecting up to our Octopus Deploy samples URL today. So I will be working off a public instance of Octopus, and it's available for you to go look at. But if while I'm doing the deployments, if you could try and stay out while I'm doing the deployments, just in case too many people log in and slow my instance down, that would be cool. Next thing to do, I'll get that set up, is go back into Jenkins. Back into manage Jenkins, sorry, and go to global tool configuration. So there are a couple of things we need to set up in here. First of all, we've got custom tool. So I mentioned at the start, you may have many agents connected up to your Jenkins instance. And when we talk about plugins, we don't want to go onto each of those agents and be installing tools every time we have a new agent, or just doing the backlog of installing the plugin on all the existing agents. What the custom tool is going to do, we're going to call this in the Jenkins file. And what it will do, it will download the Octopus Deploy plugin onto that agent ready for use, and it'll actually install the agent. And also, it's a quick way of, let's say we release a new version of the plugin, come in here, replace the link with the updated link, and it will update all your agents with the latest Octopus Deploy plugin. Next, if we jump down to the Octopus CLI tool, so we've got the Octopus Deploy, give it a name. I've got that as default. I probably could give that a better name, maybe something along the lines of Octopus CLI. But what it's mainly asking for is the path to the tool. So what you're doing is, when we install the custom tool, I know where it's going to install the Octo CLI tool. I'm just passing that path. So when we call the Octopus Deploy CLI on the Linux machine, it's going to go to this path to run the tool. Cool. Go back to my Jenkins. What we're going to look at now, we're going to look at our pipeline. So I've set up a single job pipeline for my Pet Clinic application. And I'm going to look at configure. So when you were configuring your freestyle projects, I'm sure you probably done a little bit of work with this. This is where you'd add all your steps to build your application packages, run unit tests, and deploy your packages out. and you'll get a list of steps that you can plug into that project. In here, it's a little bit simpler. So first of all, we've got some project parameters. Now these have actually came from the Jenkins file. You can either add them through the UI or you can add them through the Jenkins file. In terms of what these parameters are, so for instance, we've got space ID here. When we push packages or integrate with Octopus Deploy, we need a space ID, and we'll take you through that when I go into Octopus. So there's some parameters that we have, and we'll come on to what each one means when we do our deployment. And then simply to set up the pipeline, all we're doing is we're passing our Git repository, our Git in this case repository, into the pipeline configuration. We're specifying the branches that we want to build. So I'm just building main at the moment. And we pass in the location of our Jenkins file path. So Jenkinsfile sits in the root of the Spring Pet Conic directory, what you're going to see in just a second. So what you can see here, none of the steps, none of the build steps, none of the deployment steps, none of the unit test steps are in this pipeline. They're all coming from this Jenkins text file, which we're going to check out in just a second. So that's our pipeline set up, and we will come back to this to keep the pipeline off. What I'm going to do is check out the Jenkins file now. I'll go back, actually, look a bit better. So this is our Spring repository. We can see we've got first of all, we've got the Flyway project. This is what we're going to package up as a zip as part of our deployment process. And we can see we've gone into SQL. We can see some SQL statements that are part of this project that the Flyway tooling is going to run in for us into our MySQL databases today. So most importantly, we can see the Jenkins file, which is in the root of the repository. And we can see now we can look at our Jenkins file.
Those parameters are the ones we saw in the UI?
They are, yes. So whether I add them through the Jenkins file themselves, Shawn, or the UI will pick the parameters up. If I add them through the UI, they'll actually to check that whether they won't get picked up in the configuration file. So when you add them in through the Jenkins file, the UI will take a look at that that Jenkins file and pick up those parameters so you can edit them through the UI as well. So yeah, they're the parameters. So what we're using, so there's a couple of ways to write a Jenkins file. There's the scripted pipeline and decorative pipeline. Decorative pipeline is the newer way to write your pipeline file. It's just been made to be a little bit more descriptive and easier to write. And I'll send some resources comparing the two after this webinar. So the first thing we're doing, so when we run the pipeline, the first thing we're doing, it's adding all the relevant tools that we need to actually run our continuous integration delivery pipeline. First of all, we've got Maven. So it's going to use Maven to build our packages today. And this is the stage where we're adding our Octopus CLI tool. We'll come on to staging in just a second, actually, just in terms of where the Jenkins pipeline runs. So at the moment, I've got agents set to any. So we can run different parts of this Jenkins file on different agents. So let's say you have some agents that are solely built just for building and are potentially running unit tests. We've got this thing called stages in the Jenkins file. And you can specify each stage to run on a different agent. So let's say some of your agents are locked down. There's only a couple of agents that you want to integrate with Octopus Deploy. You can run all the Octopus Deploy stages on one particular agent. Now, in terms of stages, what do they mean? It is just a way of breaking up this Jenkins file. And it's how, when you look at the UI, when we look at the UI of a Jenkins pipeline running, it'll show the UI in stages. You could just have one stage with all your steps in, wouldn't necessarily mean you've done anything wrong. It's just in terms of when you look at the UI of the Jenkins pipeline, when it's running, you won't really know what stage it's at. So as I just mentioned, we've got the first stage, which adds the Octopus CLI integration. Then we've got a second stage of build, and we have these steps. So the first step is just to set a default version number and use an environment variable called build number, which is available from Jenkins. We then package up our application using Maven package. I'm going to package it up as a WAR file. And then this is the first part where I'm using the Octopus Deploy CLI. I'm using a command called octopack. And what it's going to do is pack up the Flyway directory as a zip. And I'm going to give it the same package version as my Pet Clinic WAR file. You can see there the source path, it's looking for Flyway, and it's going to package that up as a zip. It doesn't need any kind of special build command. It just needs zipping up and sending over to Octopus. Let's go down. Second stage is to push the packages. So once we've built our WAR package and our zip files, we want to push those to Octopus. So we're using the Octopus push command. And we're also pushing build information. So we can also get all the commits from your check-in and push those over to Octopus Deploy as well. We can use those that build information for all kind of cool stuff of sending that out to release teams or going back and checking an existing release to see what commits got pushed out as part of that production deployment. So we'll take a look at that when we're inside Octopus. And then the last step is to actually deploy the application. So first thing we're doing is we're creating a release in Octopus, and then we'd actually deploying that release out to our development and test environment. We're not going to deploy to production from the Jenkins file. I'm going to kind of take over there in Octopus and just show you how that works from an Octopus perspective. So that's our Jenkins file. So yeah, Shawn, very similar to things like the Bitbucket pipelines, the Azure pipeline. So hopefully quite familiar to you.
Yeah, pretty close. It's just not YAML.
We can ask Jenkins for a YAML version for you. So what am I doing next? So before we kick off the pipeline and see all that kind of running through, I jump into Octopus. Now, there's probably some people in the audience that may have used Octopus, never used Octopus. I'm going to cover off some really just core basics just so you can see how this deployment is working. We have some great 101s and great getting started videos. So if you feel like you get a little bit lost here, that's okay. I'm going to send out the 101s in the follow-up email. I'm just going to quickly cover off some core basics of Octopus. So first of all, with this pipeline that we're running, we're actually pushing our application packages to Linux machines running in AWS. So kind of need to look at the infrastructure of that in Octopus. So the first thing I do is jump into the infrastructure tab. So Octopus has this concept of environments. Now, environments are just a kind of a logical grouping for your deployment targets. And a deployment target is where we're going to deploy our packages. So we've built our packages in Jenkins. Where do we want to push them to? So as I just said, we're pushing ours to Linux machines, Ubuntu, running in AWS. So you see in the dev, test, and production environment, I've got a machine running in each. And all these environments are just logical groupings for your deployment targets. Mine's pretty simple: dev, test, and prod. You may have a total different cell depending on your estate. You could have dev, test, pre-prod, staging, then production. I've seen all different varieties of environments working at Octopus. In terms of deployment targets, what is a deployment target? So deployment target is essentially a Windows machine. It could be a Linux machine. It could be a Mac. It could be an Azure cloud service. And getting more and more popular by the day. Something that I need to keep learning is Kubernetes clusters. Shawn's my go-to man for that. Probably push back on that, but yes, something I need to keep learning. So in terms of the deployment target we're using today is Linux. And to enable us to deploy packages to a Linux machine, what we need to install is we've got a Tentacle on those Linux machines. A Tentacle is just like a lightweight agent that's going to kind of process all our application deployments on the deployment target. So it can run in two modes. We've got listening Tentacle and polling Tentacle. Polling essentially is on the deployment target itself. It's going to keep requesting jobs from the Octopus server, whereas the Octopus server is going to push packages directly into Tentacle. They're kind of the two differences.
Now, Adam, you mentioned that you're going to be deploying to AWS, basically Azure listed, but I don't see Amazon or even GCP. Are those supported?
Yeah, it's a great question. And when we look at the Azure tab, what you'll see here, these are cloud services in Azure that Octopus has first-class support for. And you can actually register those as deployment targets. In terms of what I'm doing today, I'm essentially just deploying to bare metal, some Linux machines running Tomcat. And no matter where your virtual machine is running, whether it's in Google, AWS, or Azure, as long as you get this Tentacle installed, that's fine. If we were talking about deploying to cloud services in AWS or Google, it's still possible, even though you don't see the options to do it here as a deployment target, it's still possible using some particular script steps that you can use in Octopus to get that job done as well. So that kind of wraps up the environment to deployment targets. We talked about in the Jenkins file about pushing packages into Octopus. So I'm pushing them to the built-in package repository. So Octopus has a built-in package repository, and that's where I'm pushing my packages today. So you can see here, go into Pet Clinic, you can see the existing package that I've already pushed. I can see all different details on the package that I'm pushing and some build information. If you've already got a feed for your packages, you can connect Octopus into an external feed. So let's say you have a Maven feed where, let's say from Jenkins, you push your packages to Maven, or like that would be JFrog. You can connect Octopus to pull the packages from there instead.
What about Docker feeds? Are those supported?
Yes, they are, Shawn. And if we talked about modernizing, maybe I should have gone down the route of Docker. But yes, you can definitely connect to a Docker feed. For instance, you connect to a Docker container registry as well. I jump into projects. Discard that. I don't want to create one of those. So next we're going to look at is the Octopus project, the Pet Clinic project. Now, I've pre-configured most of this today. And a project in Octopus is where we're going to store essentially our deployment pipeline. It's where we're going to add all the steps and variables to actually deploy our packages to our infrastructure. The first we're going to look at is variables. I'm actually going to make a couple of changes to suit our application. So variables give us a way of injecting values into our configuration files, also into our steps. So what I'm going to do is just jump back to my repository. I'm going to source. Here we go, Shawn. See if I remember this. That's something I was confused with. Resources. And we have this Java properties file. Now, yes, I'm still using Java properties files for my Java application. Probably the de facto standard now is YAML files. But I'm using property files. One thing to note is when you're placing, when we do this kind of functionality with variables and injecting values into our configuration files, Octopus supports Java property files, YAML files, JSON, and XML. We'll go on slightly in just a second on how that works. So if I take a look at my application, MySQL property files, so my Pet Clinic is going to connect into a MySQL database service, actually running in AWS again. And we have these three values here. We've got Spring data source URL, data source username, and data source password. Now, these all change as I'm deploying to different environments. I'm deploying to dev, test, or production. These values change. So I want Octopus to come in here, come into these application property files, look at the key name, and replace that value for me. So what we need to do, let's take Spring data source URL. We'll add that as a variable. And what I do, I've got something already, I've got a connection string already created here. So now I've added this, what Octopus is going to do, Octopus is going to look inside my package for those property files and look for a name called Spring Data Source URL and replace the value out with the value in Octopus. We can see here, I've got a MySQL connection string. Where you'll see this special syntax here, which is the hashtag open curly brace, project database DNS name, closing curly brace. I've already created some variables, some URLs to my running databases in AWS. So what's going to happen when we inject this value into the configuration file, it's going to replace this value here with the value from project database DNS name. What we can see, each one of those is scoped to a different environment. So when I'm deploying to dev, it's going to use this value. I'm deploying to test, that value, and same for production. And the same goes for project database name. So I'm going to add that in. I'm going to grab the next two. Spring its name. What I'm going to do, we have having a plain text value. I'm going to change that type to sensitive. And I want to make sure I get this right because things are case sensitive. And again, I'm just going to grab the final one, which is Spring data source password. Again, I'm going to change the type of that to sensitive. Cool. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at a feature inside our process that enables this to work with our configuration files. I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and I'm going to jump straight into our deployment process. So this is our deployment process, quite a simple one. But firstly, we've got a step built by Octopus, and it's a manual intervention step. The first step to run, and we can get steps in Octopus to run on every environment. I've got this particular step to only run for production. Now, what this step is going to do is going to halt my entire deployment process, and it's going to wait for approval from the Octopus administrators team. So what I'm doing, I've provided some instructions. Please can you approve my production deployment? And it's going to wait on the responsible team. An additional step I could put in here is maybe a Slack message or an email to send out to that team just to notify them that they are, it is waiting on them to approve the deployment. We can see here, we've got this condition. So like I said, I just want this to run for production. So I've set a condition on here, only run for specific environments, and that's prod. If we quickly jump through the next steps, we've got create a database if not exists. So this is a community-based step. Actually, I could be wrong here, but Shawn, I'm pretty sure you're the creator of this step. And essentially what it's going to do, it's going to create a database in my MySQL instance if it doesn't exist. So if it doesn't work, luckily we've got Shawn on our webinar today. Hopefully, Shawn, it all goes well. Next step, migrate database changes. So again, this is based on another community step template, and again, maintained, and I'm pretty sure created by Shawn. And essentially what it's going to do, this is responsible for running our Flyway migrations project. It's going to push our package pet clinic Flyway and run our database scripts that we had in that in our repository. So no sweat, Shawn.
Just for clarification, this is a bash port of the original Flyway migrate step, which was written by Alex Yates.
Yeah, cool. Yes, so I needed this one to run on Linux, and I'm glad Shawn was there to add that in. And the last step is we're deploying our WAR file into Tomcat. So this is a step built from Octopus. So Shawn, you can relax if this one goes wrong. It's not your fault. So in terms of package details, we deploy the Pet Clinic Web, which is what we're building in the pipeline. Some details for the Tomcat deployment. So it uses the Tomcat manage URL to deploy our application. We've got the management username and password, which I added in as variables earlier. And we've also got custom scripts enabled, so we can enable additional features on steps in Octopus. And I'm running a post deployment script just to grab the public URL from my AWS machine and print that out so I know the URL to my pet clinic application after I've deployed it. And lastly, we've got structured configuration variables. So I've talked about how you could go place variable values in Octopus in JSON, YAML, XML, and Java property files. Excuse me. We actually need to tell Octopus where those property files live. So when I built the package, the property files live in webinf classes. And what I've used is a wildcard to look through all our property files.
Did that option used to be called something else, didn't it?
It did. So I actually did a webinar on this a month ago now. So in 2020.4, if you're an existing user of Octopus, you may have seen this labeled as JSON configuration variables. And it only supported JSON and .config files. In 2020.4 of Octopus, we added additional functionality to add support for YAML, XML, and Java property files. So yeah, good spot, Shawn. And it's something I keep forgetting. I keep looking for JSON configuration variables, and it's not. It's structured configuration variables. So cool. That's our deployment process. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go back over to Jenkins. We're going to run our pipeline. And what we're going to do is we're going to open what's called Blue Ocean. So I'm going to go even more modern now. Open that up a new tab. Oh, I can see totally kind of fresh UI here. Shawn, I see a smile on your face.
Yeah, Jenkins is a great tool, but its UI has always felt a bit dated to me. So this is a nice refresh.
Yeah, definitely. And Jenkins have released this to kind of rethink the Jenkins experience. And I've been using this a couple of weeks now, and it is so much nicer in this UI to, first of all, design pipelines. So if you didn't want to configure your pipeline as code, you can actually come in here, create a new pipeline, and do it through the UI. And using Blue Ocean, which is just a plugin that you can install into Jenkins, it is a much smoother experience. So we can see our pipeline here, Pet Clinic, and I get the option to run. So I'm running this manually. We can get this to run based on commits to different branches, such as main or development or on pull requests. I'm just going to run this manually. We can see there, there's parameters from our Jenkins file have appeared. We could change these on the fly. I'm just going to run that with the defaults. We're going to see that's going to kick off. We've got a little pop-up down there to say open. I missed that. So what we can see now, we can see our pipeline actually running through. So we can see the first stage. So what the UI has done here, it's pulled out all the stages. And as the agent moves through different stages, we can see it get updated here in the UI. It does look really clean. I suppose one of the good points to pipeline as well, as this is building, if, let's say the agent, let's say you've got a build that takes over an hour and the agent suddenly drops out. You can rest assured with pipelines that they're durable. When another agent picks up the job, it's going to carry on from where it left off. Or if you bring the same agent back up, it won't just it'll just restart the stage that you're on. So we can see here the build. It sets the version number of our packages, and it's now doing a Maven package on the repository to get me a nice WAR file. Let's give that a second. Normally takes about a minute and a half. Obviously, when other people are watching, it will take a little bit longer. But yeah, hopefully the UI is pleasing Shawn. Oh, there we go. We can see now part of the build, it's packaging our Flyway package. So as part of the build step, we've got the Octopus Deploy integration package in our Flyway project. We've gone past the build stage, and now we're pushing packages into Octopus. So if we take a look, we've got package petclinic.web. It's going to push the second package, which is our petclinic Flyway package. I wonder if I can just zoom in to make that a little bit bigger so you can see that. Hope that's a little bit clearer. Here we scroll down. Good, push the Flyway package. And we're going to do move on to our deploy stage. So this way it's going to create the release in Octopus, and it's going to deploy out our release straight to development. So from a commit, you can deploy straight to dev, test, potentially production, but probably wouldn't recommend that. As you can see there, it's created the Octopus release. So it's created a release 2.0.29, and we'll check that out in Octopus in just a second. We can see the packages it's using. And next is going to deploy the release. So we come into here. We can see all the steps that it's going to run through. If we jump over to Octopus, we can see in Octopus it's created a release 2.0.29, and it's applying that out to development. You can see it's run through those steps. It's just currently deploying our petclinic web application out to Tomcat. Just quickly jump back. Oh, it's not updated the. I think that's cool. We'll use Octopus. So we'll check the task log. So we can see it's run through all these steps. It's done what as when it's on the acquire package step. What that is, that's Octopus pushing the packages that will push from Jenkins onto our deployment servers. And it's done the Flyway migration. We deployed the petclinic web application. If you remember, I wrote out the URL. So let's check to make sure that's up and running. There we go. Make sure it's connected to the database. It is great stuff. And also, if we go back into overview, it should have kicked that off straight to test. So we go back to Jenkins, should be able to see that again. Just going to give that a quick refresh. Yeah, so it's deploying the release to our test environment now. So you can see there the environment is test. And we've got all green. Meaning it's created the release, it's deployed it to development, it's deployed it to test. I'm going to take over in Octopus and deploy through Octopus, deploy to production through Octopus. Go back into the overview, you can see we've got the green tick on test. What we'll do, we'll just kick this off to production and deploy. And we're going to see we've got this little orange down. So if you remember on the first step, we actually had an approve deployment step. So what Octopus has done is just halted the deployment. Let's say you have this controlled through the Jenkins file. Jenkins file will wait as well until the somebody has actually approved the deployment. So it's not going to break if you have an approval for your Jenkins pipeline. It's not going to break that Jenkins pipeline. It'll just kind of wait until the approval's gone ahead. So I'm going to assign that to me. I would say, obviously, I'm assigning that to myself. And I talked earlier about how important it was to get approval from a different team. I probably should have got Shawn to approve this for me. But I'm part of the Octopus administrators team, and just for this webinar, I'm just going to go ahead and approve it. Once approved, it's going to start running down and creating the final steps for our production deployment. What we'll do, we'll take a look at the task log in a little bit more detail. So yeah, it's done the deployment, and it's just waiting to kick off the rest of the steps. There we go. You can see it's run the create database did not exist. The Pet Clinic prod database did exist, so you need to create it. Again, we're acquiring the packages. Again, what it's doing is just pushing the packages to our deployment targets. I'll get through the final stages. Working over on the Flyway tool. There you go, Shawn. You can relax. Your step template has worked. The final stage of deploying the Pet Clinic web application. So we can see here when we're deploying the Pet Clinic, if you remember, we had that feature turned on to look at our application configuration files. We can see there, so it's looking for, it's basically exploded the WAR file, and it's looking for application MySQL properties. Once it finds them, it will replace the variables from Octopus with the values inside those configuration files. We've got application start successfully. And go ahead, just double check production's up and running, and it is. So yeah, we go back. So to recap, we've set up a Jenkins pipeline to build our application packages. Inside that same Jenkins file, we've pushed the packages using the Octopus Deploy integration over to Octopus. We've created, released Octopus and deployed through dev, test, and production, and all that CI/CD pipeline has been stored as code inside your repository. So yes, that's my demo part wrapped up. Any questions for Shawn?
We've got just a couple. The first one is you mentioned that the structured files work with XML. Does that use like XPath or something to figure out what those nodes are?
Yeah, that's right. I wonder if I can give you an example of that. I probably can. If I can type properly. So yes, long story short, it does use XPath. So if I go down, go to XML. We've got some great docos on this, and I'm going to send that out as part of the resources in the follow-up email to the webinar. But yes, it uses XPath. So a simple bit of XPath is, let's say, // So the variable name would be // connection string to find the connection string in the XML. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert in XPath. Maybe something I should learn. Maybe you've got a little more experience with me, Shawn. But yes, it uses XPath, and you can replace entire XML elements, individual elements, attributes. So it's really powerful stuff.
There's a follow-up question to that. What about namespaces? Are those supported?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit out of my realm, but we do support namespaces. I know it can get a bit messy when we talk about namespaces. But yes, you can. You can still use the XPath expressions to replace variables if you've got namespaces in your XML file.
Another question, what version of Octopus was the structured files introduced in?
So yeah, fairly new feature, and it was introduced in 2020.4. I've got a little bit more of a detailed demo on that, so I'll send that out as well in the follow-up email. So yes, to be clear, 2020.4 to answer your question simply.
Cool. Okay, that looks like all we had for questions.
Cool.
So thank you very much for that demonstration, Adam. I'm probably going to go out and download that Blue Ocean so that I have a more updated UI for Jenkins.
Definitely do it. You won't regret it.
Just to reiterate that we did record the session, so that recording will be available within 24 to 48 hours. We do have a couple of upcoming webinars, 2020, A Year with Octopus on December 2nd, and Shaping Up Engineering Octopus Deploy on the 17th. Both of those are going to be done by some of our VP level people at Octopus Deploy, so be sure to wear a suit when you attend that webinar. And with that, thank you very much for joining us. See you later, Adam.
Hey, Shawn.